this video, we're going to continue working on the forecastle and the poop deck. If you recall the previous video, we pretty much removed all the trumpeter's detail, added a wood deck, and added some more detail. But at any rate, we're doing well. Let's go ahead and continue working. Now that the winches are done, we're going to go ahead and move on to the anchors. Now this is the main anchor that goes in the front, and this little hook here kind of like clamps on, so be very careful because it's very fragile. As far as the detail is concerned, we're not going to go through the process of cutting it. These are just the pieces you need to get the anchor in place. So what I did with this anchor, I laid it down on a strip of adhesive tape so it won't move around, because these parts are very small and they just don't stay in place. So the adhesive tape works really well for me. So once you lay this in place, just throw a couple of dabs crazy glue on each end and then onto the anchor itself so it could stay in place. But be patient because it is not an easy task. Let me go ahead and position this in the right place so I can drop it in. There we go. Now this eye bolt was somewhat difficult to bend, so I tried it first with by hand. It ain't happening. Definitely have to use a bending tool. They're really tiny, so trying to get this eye bolt in was also a challenge. And once you set it in place, it should just fall right in. And there you go. Now I couldn't really bend this with the tweezers. I tried a couple times, so I'm going to hold it down with the tweezer on this end and push that little eye hole with a razor just enough so it won't slip out. And there you go. Okay. So now that this eye bolt is on there, it won't slip. It looks like it's going to come out, but it's not going to slip out. And once I set it in place, I'll probably drop a piece of super glue on it. The left legs, I just bent down. Now, when I threw a drop of super glue here, I realized that when it comes to the resin and brass, they don't adhere immediately, which is a good thing and allows me to position it right in place. May have to hold it for about 10 seconds. And there you go. So here's what it looks like when it's all done. And we'll go ahead and paint this one all black, flat black that is, using XF1 Tamiya. So I went on ahead and put some extra pieces here, put a generous amount of paint, especially on the chains themselves, because there's a lot of holes and gaps that are on there. Make sure you get all the sides of the anchors. Now once it's all done, we're going to go ahead and texture it with Tamiya's Weathering Master Kit C, of course the gunmetal, and we've used this before. Now use a generous amount. The more you put, the more the steel stands out, so to speak. Now I'll probably be using this throughout the model, so I'll just be saying that I textured it with gunmetal instead of going through the whole process. But it looks really good from a distance. We're under the microscope, that's why you see nothing but glitter, but it actually looks like steel when you look at it with the naked eye. All right, so I did the rest of the parts as well. As you can see, the chain looks really good. All the highlighted areas are shiny. And now the breakwater. Now this guy is another challenge because we have to get these legs into these little slots. I just used some super glue, and then before it completely dries, just bent it down and drop a little more super glue right on the end of it, just to keep it sturdy. So you do this throughout the whole entire breakwater wall. And the process is the same. Now, once we got all done, we went on ahead and painted this white, and flat white that is, and we're going to go ahead and paint the legs, just the legs only, the custom orange that we created. So we're going to be using these 402 LED lights. I like the installation on these lights because the resin ones I just was kind of a bit nervous about. And the soldering is so good, so we can bend these any way we want, bend them nice and straight, so they can appear to be like a light casing. Just fish it through here. Once you fish it through, we'll go ahead and align it right with some tweezers and just drop some glue right on top of it. So this is what it looks like when it's done. Let's go ahead and test it out. There we go. Finally made my connection. Okay, now that we got this done, we got these bases. We're gonna put the crane bases on now. And just fish these lines through. Once you get them through, go ahead and use some of this Tamiya extra thin. This stuff is really strong, so don't drop it, don't smell it. And it actually fuses the two plastic pieces together. Now you notice I have a little battery block I created in the back specifically for the LED lights only, for the 402s. And I'll just be using this power pack just to test these guys out at all times. Just align it just right, and make sure the ladders, if you can still see a little bit of the ladder where you sanded it, they go inwards. Okay, so here is the rail I created. We're going to go ahead and tie these wires to these copper rail that I created with the copper tape. And I'm going to use some more tape to just hold the wires down as I solder them on in place. And do the same for both sides. Now I'm using this soldering iron from Miniware. It's a really cool soldering iron. What I love about it, it heats up immediately, as you can see. And it's preset to 300 degrees, but I like to shoot to 400. So just hold it in the front. And once you get the 3 just on the right, just bring it all the way up to 400 and just let it sit. And the computer will pick that up and just shoot up to 400. Now, 400, be very careful. Do not touch that tip. You will get fried. Now, I'm using lead-free solder. Now, these 402 wires, the insulation will just melt right off, and you'll definitely get good contact, but you may have to make sure that the solder is melting on top of it. And cut the excess wiring off. Remove your tape and just go ahead and pull the wires right out. They'll just come right off. You've already cut them. There we go. All right, so this is what we look like. Now what I need to add is a quick connect, and I think the best place to put the quick connect would probably be right here in the middle. This is where it's going to go. So again, use some tape to hold it down. Solder it up. Go ahead and solder your quick connect in place. Just be careful not to put the iron too much on the plastic, because you can melt it, but it's pretty thick. So there you go. The quick connect is on. So let's go ahead and just test the lights at this point to see where we're at. All right. That is right on, looking good. Okay, I'm happy with that. So looks like the rails are going to work great. I'm going to be using this procedure throughout the whole entire build, and looks like it has good continuity. The lights are not flickering, and we're going to go ahead and move on to this platform. Now this platform has 3 lights, so I'll set these lights in place. And under the platform, there's also these poles. I used trumpeter's poles just to get the size. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and scribe it with a razor so I could mark the size of this pole. So I don't know, let me see, you can see the mark right here, and just use a nail clipper to just go ahead and clip these rods. There you go. We'll find a scribe and then just clip it out, and go ahead and do that for the next, I think we need 7 of them. And these poles again go underneath the platform. So here's a platform completed, ready to be painted. As you can see, I put the lights in, the poles are in. I took these wires and fished them through the this access area underneath the actual platform itself. As you can see, I'm sure everybody's done that. So now it's on the deck itself. And let this dry. Once this dries up, we'll go ahead and put the wood deck on here using the recommended glue. Now, if you notice, I have 3 pieces of copper tape on top of there because when I tested the lights, they did bleed through the platform itself. So once I put these little pieces of copper tape everywhere there's a LED, they did not bleed. Once the wood deck dries up, we'll go ahead and start wiring in the lights that are underneath this platform. Okay, so here it is. We're going to go ahead and solder all these in, and it's the same procedure. You separate them, put a piece of tape down, and solder them. So I will not be going through all of them. You just get the idea at this point. Using our handy soldering iron, so now, but this solder that I'm using has flex in the inside. And if you notice, I put an extra strip of LED on the top end to illuminate these windows over here. So let's move on to these vents. I decided to paint the inside of the vents field gray because I wanted it to resemble some type of dust. Basically, also to make the screen stand out a little bit better. You're not supposed to go over this edge, but as you can see, that's just going to be touch up. And I painted the screens themselves gloss white just so we could have different contrasts. You could use flat, but I went with gloss. And now we're putting in some Gorilla Glue here to lay the screens in place. Now when you lay the screens down, go ahead and try to square them off where they're vertically and horizontal, the lines. And then just do a little bit of touch up around that overspill in the gray and you're set. So we'll go ahead and lay them in place now. Just use some super glue, and for some reason I'm able to adjust these. The super glue did not dry on contact, and it's really good to use a super glue when you're using plastic on the actual wood itself. So here we go with all the vents done, touched up, and ready to go. We're going to lay out this winch on this end. And we'll go ahead and add this final vent to the forecastle. And there you go. So now that this is set up, we're going to go ahead and put the rest of the details in place. These are valves that I believe initiates the chain to move in and out. I'm just dropping a piece of super glue on the end so that it could be sturdy. Went on ahead and dropped the remaining winches that go on the forecastle themselves. Now be very careful because they're very fragile. So here's where we're at now. A nice close-up look at our progress. Okay, so let's go ahead and test the lighting to see what it looks like. So these are all the lights that are on the same copper rail and back. Okay, so the crane housings look good. Just got to get the ladders on those guys. And there is a platform all set and ready to go. So I'm happy with this. This looks good. So here is a forecastle. I forgot to hit the play button, so sorry that you didn't get to see how I install these water breaks. But basically what I did was I put some glue at the bottom here and just kept setting pieces of glue all the way down so it's set in place. I did the same, but I did lose a leg here. And I won't be gluing the legs down at the bottom. I was thinking about it. There's another leg I lost here. I didn't lose them. They just fell off. I still have them. And but in any rate, it came out really good. And as you can see, we have the cranes that we've already made on an earlier video that we'll be putting over here. But we'll set these up on a later date. I wanted to talk about the wood deck for a minute. Here's an extra piece of wood deck, and I'm having issues where the wood deck would get scratched. You guys recall that I cut this corner out and I put it in because I actually wiped it with water. Now I was using a tool to pry a part that wasn't straight and I hit the deck and it kind of made a scratch similar to something like this. So we had to scratch something like that on it. It wasn't quite that big, but it was an eyesore. And I found the color that will actually fix this, or at least get it looking decent. So as you can see the scratch there, what you do is you take the fine end and just go over it, each plank that you see. Lightly, lightly, lightly. Don't push too hard. And stay on the plank and keep going. Sometimes you got to go over more than once. Now you will lose the little black lines that separate the planks, but you won't have that big old white nasty look. So as you can see, the scratch is nearly gone. Get this marker if you do scratch your deck. PM72 eggshell, and that'll work excellent for you repairing your deck.